TNKR Media.
Welcome to Inspiring Entrepreneurs, our 15th season, showcasing stories from outstanding business people, brought to you by BDO Canada. My name is Dan Delmar, along with Mike Newton of BDO. Hello, Mike.
Hey, Dan, how are you?
Excellent. How are you?
Very good, thanks.
We've got a few more inspiring stories left before the end of the season, 3 more weeks, and we have a big guest to end the season. We'll share that with you next week. In the meantime, we'll tell you about an innovator that is looking into companies for answers, looking inward. We'll have Samer Saab on the program today, founder and CEO of the insight solutions company Explorance. They're a feedback company. They collect data from workforces, from universities, and help organizations make better decisions with that data. So that's on the way on Inspiring Entrepreneurs. Our specialist will be Mia Barouki, Senior Specialist People Experience Advisory at BDO Canada, and she'll talk to us about AI in the workplace, which of course Samer uses in his products, and we'll get to that as well with him. But first, as usual, Mike, news and notes, and I think we should probably discuss the budget. Is that on your mind this week?
Yeah, I lied when you asked me how I was. I said I was doing well, but it's budget week, so it's never a warm and fuzzy feel. And I got to tell you, this week's certainly created a lot of pandemonium and havoc when it comes to the whole capital gains discussions.
Yeah, so let's quickly recap what's going on with capital gains and who does this affect? You know, realistically, what kind of entrepreneurs, what kind of individuals are affected by this decision?
It's wide-reaching. I mean, for good or for bad, for the last 5 or 6 years, myself and one of the guys in the office had a pool going in terms of whether they were actually going to touch capital gains exemptions. And he walks into my office, I don't know, 4:45 on Tuesday, and looks at me. He goes, "So, what did you pick this year?" And I said, "Why?" And he said, "Well, because they touch capital gains." And I said, No, seriously." He goes, "Yep, they're moving from 50% inclusion to 66 and 2/3 inclusion." That's very, very accountant-esque or tax-esque for that. What does that mean? It means at the end of the day, for every $100 gain that you had, you were only including $50. Now you're going to be including $67, and that's effective as of June 25th this year. The interesting element of all of this, and I'm not always known for holding my thoughts, is this means that between now and the 25th of June, we are going to see a plethora of trading, and whether that's stock market, whether that's people rushing to paper deals that they had a company that they were selling for, because this inclusion is now a huge increase in potential tax. What does that mean to me? Well, if you actually look through the budget in detail, you'll see that a large part of their spend is financed within the first 12 months, which means the government is anticipating a significant cash grab between now and June 25th based on people triggering gains that are going to allow for a 50% inclusion as opposed to 67 and 2/3. It touches a few areas. What does it touch? Obviously, after June 25th, 2024, there is going to be a $250,000 exemption. So the first $250 of capital gains that you incur, you won't have to pay tax on. But that's only after June 25th. The goal here is, as the budget was called, the fairness budget, the goal here is thinking that $250 is sufficient for the average individual in their life in order to be able to use a capital gains exemption. Unfortunately, I think for a lot of what supports the economy from a business perspective and the entrepreneurial perspective, this is going to be a relatively expensive proposition going forward. I know in the budget they threw in the Canadian Entrepreneurs Incentive, which over the next 10 years at $200,000 per year, you're going to be allowed to include only 33% as opposed to 2/3. But at creeping up at $200,000 a year, you're kicking the can down the road an awfully long way in order to get any kind of benefit. And the only thing that was maintained is the capital gains exemption on a lifetime for qualifying investments is going, which is marginally over $1 million now, is going to go up to $1.25 million next year. It's just a lot of things that are politically motivated in fairness and trying to drive, I hate to say this, almost drive a wedge again between the entrepreneur side of what's going on and everything else. And while I do believe that there are an awful lot of people in the world that aren't paying their fair share of taxes, I don't think a $2 million Canadian entrepreneur exemption is going to solve this issue by pushing this onto the individuals. I hate to say this, but a $2 million gain on a business that you've worked your life on is not that sizable in the end.
Just to recap, we can list things that remain exempt from capital gains. Let me know if I've been paying attention here. So your primary residence, your secondary residence up to that $250,000 mark, RRSPs, RESPs, what else?
Yeah, so your RRSPs and your RESPs and your tax-free savings accounts, all of the gains are essentially sheltered within the plans anyways. So there was no tax before on those within the plan, so there's no tax going forward on this. But yeah, other than trying to balance out the economic approach to different classes. I unfortunately think that while trying to target what they considered to be the middle class effect, I actually think they've created a bigger wedge between the middle class and between the upper class and the lower class, with once again at the cost of the middle class.
A lot of younger entrepreneurs, some tech entrepreneurs like Spotify founders are criticizing the capital gains move, especially. Do you think that it is an aggressive enough move to discourage innovation, or do you think they've come close to striking a balance there to get in more revenue without scaring away investment?
Oh boy. Okay. I guess there is no proper balance in this discussion. I think at the end of the day, I think part of what we are trying to maintain in Canada is the brain power and the economic growth that comes from developing businesses and growing businesses, and not to create that shall we say the reins on holding back business. I think a lot of people are going to have a problem with this. I think that the underlying philosophy of the entrepreneur, and I'm not talking about public company, large company, I'm talking about that entrepreneur, which is the backbone of Canadian economy, has to be about vision. It has to be about growth, and it can't be about thinking to go somewhere else. We've talked in the past on the show about how we lack manufacturing, how we lack production, how we've been a hotbed of tech. Well, tech has been supported from a long time with government funds initially to get this off the ground. Now you're going to turn around and you're going to say, hey, we want to get a lot of this money back in cash. And I would say that the majority of entrepreneurs don't cash out and walk away into the sunset. Most reinvest and keep going. And I think that's the fear I have with this attack on capital gains. And it'll be interesting. We've been here before. We've gone from the 50 to the 2/3 to the 75 to back to 50. At some point, I guess it'll depend on how long those in power decide. But at some point, you get a different government. We may see this reversed somewhere in the future.
Real estate was a big highlight. They're selling off some government land and a lot to encourage new building. Very ambitious targets in terms of housing. Is that good news for our cities potentially?
Yeah, I mean, look, there has to be a balance between construction and what people can afford to live in the end of the day. A, B, you can't continue to create low-end housing with poor quality. I mean, ultimately, there's a cost to society on that as well. So I think the attempt here, I don't know enough to determine whether it's going to work or it's not going to work. I think the effort is moving in the right direction. I think there will be some positive benefits society-wise, but again, there's just so much debt hanging over our head at this point that how many times can we kick the can down the road before we figure out where this is taking us?
I think going forward and for the end of the season, we'll be talking a lot about productivity and manufacturing going forward in general. I think in our private lives as well, and how important that is to the Canadian economy. And on that note, we loved our chat about managers last week, and how indeed the job site has noted the explosion in the amount of manager positions in Canada, practically 50% more in just the last few years. You took this piece that was actually originally printed in Harvard Business Review in 2011 that you wanted to come back to because it made such an impression. The headline is funny. It's called "First, Let's Fire All the Managers." And Gary Hamel goes on to write that management is the least efficient activity in your organization. Canadians are overly managed, I think, as a people, are we not?
Oh, Yeah, and I don't know if it's a chicken or the egg syndrome here. I don't know if they're so used to being managed that they feel they need to be managed, so there's no drive or incentive to do it themselves, or is there no drive and do it to do it themselves because they're overly managed? Somewhere in this there's a balancing act, and it was the example he gives in the article, which I found hilarious, is if you're having a small organization and you have one manager to manage 10 employees. Okay, not so bad. You have, if you have 100,000 employees with that same 1 to 10, all of a sudden you need 11,111 managers. Well, you say, well, that's not the same proportion. Well, the argument is that's because you need 1,100 more managers just to manage the managers. This is, the hierarchy of managers is exacting a hefty tax on any organization. Again, don't know if this is chicken or the egg, but do people not want to do so? They aspire to be managers, or I just find that it creates one of the topics he talks about is a typical management hierarchy increases the risk of large calamitous decisions. The decision gets bigger, the ranks of those people, now all of a sudden people are afraid to make comments, so you just kind of back away or you become disinterested. And I think there's an awful lot. And I laughed at the last line, which was, there's the cost of tyranny, that we forget, which is basically narrowing an individual's scope of authority, and you shrink their incentive, drive, imagine, and contribution at the end of the day. And at some point in time, there's been some great examples of companies that kind of bypass the manager scenario because it actually makes a very heavy layered environment. And I could go on with many examples of where I think management is way too high. And as to give a little bit of hook to end our season next year, this year and in a couple of weeks, you can only have so many chefs in the kitchen.
Indeed, that's a pretty good tease for our season finale, which will be amazing, by the way. And coming up next, another inspiring entrepreneur, Samer Saab, co-founder of the insight solutions company Explorance. He'll talk about listening to your employees, listening to your organization and your customers to drive better impact and performance. Samer, welcome to CJAD.
Thank you for having me, Dan, and Mike. Nice to meet you.
First question is the easiest one. What is Explorance?
Actually, the hardest one for me, but yes, Explorance is a company that I founded 21 years ago, so it's been a while. And the main premise of it is to help organizations, higher education and HR of large organizations, better support their people. It could be a student, could be an employee, to be heard better, so typically be able to express their feedback, improve their engagement, improve their learning and development. In an ideal world, to help them end up where they want to end up in their life. We tailor to the companies themselves, work with about 25% of the Fortune 500s on the enterprise side, 25% of the top 100 universities in the world, 300 and some employees. 2/3 of us are in Montreal, our headquarters are in Montreal, and we operate out of 5 other locations globally today to be able to provide the global coverage to our customers in about 50 countries.
So is this a really sophisticated rate my teacher type scenario, or I don't want to say dumb it down for our audience and for me, but explain it a little more user friendly.
Yeah. Where you stated it well. Obviously there is the basic consumer grade thing, which could be a SurveyMonkey or a Rate My Professor. What we do is we work with organizations to set up lasting listening strategies. So we could come to an organization and say, we want to make sure we set up a listening machine where every time an employee wants to apply for a job, gets accepted, gets onboarded, takes a training, leaves the company, etc., you're able to trigger automated requests for their voice to be expressed, capture the information, transform it into insight, escalate to the right people so they deal with it right there, and then take the insight at scale, help people know what to do. So it's much more foundational or structural. It's usually going to come with an array of supporting in the strategy side, in implementing, setting up the technology. And once it's done, you have a listening machine in place that will help you automate these things. With, the key focus on it is how to make sure our people are more engaged, how to make sure our employer or organization brand is stronger, how to make sure that our people are growing, and how to make sure that they're not going to leave us, type of thing. So the main premises around these topics.
So would you consider yourselves a communication company that is using the technology to the nth degree, or are you the tech company
Yes, tech
that is providing the medium for the communication?
Exactly. We're a tech company. First and foremost, probably I would say 90% of us are from the tech background. What we provide is technology to solve problems. But what we realize over time is that there's a lot of change management, a lot of guidance that need to take place. So we embedded support infrastructure around it to make sure that we don't just give our customers just another survey solution. We actually go in and help them ensure that they're implementing a true listening strategy that drives improvement overall. So really making technology being useful and not just, gimmicky.
What are your thoughts on Slack? Is that a competitor of yours? Is there some overlap there, or is it sort of a complementary
It's
thing?
very it's it's in the ecosystem. We're more into the feedback, so we have to just make sure that when we say listening, and what we look at is we're trying to listen to signals, voices, with what people are saying, and be able to drive that into a prescriptive insight. Whereas Slack is more a communication channel. So it's not usually, nobody's going to go and analyze a Slack channel and say, what are the key insights? What is it that my 5,000 managers are going to do to improve something? So there could be touch points where you want to leverage a Slack channel to get feedback from people in it, or you want to use some of the more advanced AI solutions that we introduced that could literally go through your Slack communication channel and say, what are the top 5 recommendations we're receiving from our employees about these topics, and what should we do about it? So it's more complementary, just another data point, but the purpose is very different. It's on one side, it's pure facilitating communication. What we do is really facilitating people to give feedback better, to listen to feedback better, to act on feedback better, and drive actual improvement from it.
So a lot of people probably don't know you by the name Explorance, but maybe by your brand name. So you have 3 brand names, I guess, that are more visible to the public. Do you want to maybe give us a little bit of insight into those?
Yeah. So obviously, when we started, Explorance many years ago, we had one product called Blue. And we created confusion in the market because the company is named Explorance, conversions of exploration and performance. So how do you explore data to drive performance? And we have a product called Blue. So some of our customers would call us Blue, others would call us Explorance. And obviously, then we acquired the company in 2018 that had a very strong brand product, which is Metrics That Matter. And it's a product that's sold to chief learning officers to be able to prove the effectiveness of their learning programs. And the brand is really solid. And then that came under the umbrella of Explorance. And we recently introduced the AI-powered voice of the employee or voice of the student analytics software, which is called Millie. And that's, kind of moving like, hot fire, and then everybody wants it. And the brand is strong as well. But on top of that, we're Explorance. So today our strategy is really, we're using Explorance Blue, Explorance MTM, Explorance Millie in the naming, to make sure that there is still association with the company, because a lot comes with it. Our employees were explorers, we're not employees. And our customers like to associate with exploration because they consider themselves explorers, because the software they use from us is used to be able to explore the insights they're getting from the voice of it. So, our hope is that everybody knows Explorance and just understand that the products that are within are just a product that Explorance sells, because today we're talking about 3, there may be more one day or less. But you are very right that for a bit, we have created brand confusion, and hopefully we're moving away from that slowly and surely.
So Dan, I got to say, that's the first time I've heard brand confusion created by yourself that actually prompted us to go get new products and develop more. So it's a new marketing strategy, I guess, that we're looking at in this area. Dan, you look at this, I don't know about you. I mean, it's a lot of fantastic stuff here, but probably still need a little clarification.
Yeah, who are your clients, Samer?
Yes, sure. So our clients are usually, I would say, medium to large enterprise to start with, or the more complex higher education institutions, the large community colleges and universities. Examples would be, let's say Microsoft is a client. So in their case, they use our solutions for ensuring that their big network of learning providers that give the Microsoft certifications globally, they're providing learning of a certain standard of quality and value. So they use metrics that matter by Explorance in that case to do that. But they also use Millie to be able to look into the comments that the learners, the Microsoft learners will give to ensure that they're picking up on certain items that could be critical. Is there some learning provider in some faraway country that is providing courses in a certain way that's not in line with the core values of what they try to do? So that could be an example. An example could be, large pharmaceutical like AbbVie, for example, where in their case, they work with us to be able to assess the competency landscape of their leaders. So, they want to make sure they have the right competency set amongst our leaders. So we go in, we measure the competency level, we look at it at a high level, we say, okay, is overall your organization moving in the right direction? Is it not moving in the right direction? What should you improve? How should you improve your development and learning programs to make your managers better? And it's been years we work with them, and especially after COVID, all companies have lost considerable talent and considerable skill within their leadership, which is affecting their productivity. It could be a university like Harvard that uses our solutions to measure the effectiveness of their teaching and learning program. So what's more referred to as course evaluations. In the academic segment, it's usually very complex, very decentralized. They have hundreds of different ways to get feedback depending on which student is in which program or which department, and they need all these insights to ensure that every single course matters. So it is diverse, but it goes around the same concept at the end. What it is built around is how do we ensure people are being heard.
Samer Saab joins us from Explorance. So using, I guess if I can recap in a way, Samer, the kinds of deep insights that we use often for external communications, you're turning that internally and trying to learn things from within. Is that a fair recap?
Yes, we try to encourage a culture where you first of all, don't ask for more questions than you can solve problems. Second, don't ask me questions about stuff you already have. Third, if you want to ask me questions that are of certain quality, that if the insights you get from me are useful and actionable, so you can make tangible change with it. So definitely working on that notion of feedback literacy and ensuring that things are done right. And if I'm asking questions not to hurt you or punish you, but to actually listen, understand from you, and be able to make a tangible, positive outcome with it, that typically improves the service or product or performance or productivity or whatever it is I'm trying to say.
So, Mike, we're talking about big data and how, in the case of Explorance, they like to collect some of the data internally and learn from insights from within. Top concerns, Mike, that you're seeing from entrepreneurs who are skittish about, I guess, hiring companies like Explorance or delving into big data. What are some of the almost conspiratorial comments you might hear sometimes?
You want me to talk about the colander on my head once again? All right. No, I think part of the issue here is, what do entrepreneurs do with the information that they gather, or what does a big company do? It's one thing to gather information. I think it sets an expectation once you have your team answering questions and delving into information, that if you don't do anything with it, you're actually done more damage than, it's like I'm pretending that I care. So I think there's the usage of data. I think there is the application of the data. And another concern that I have is, what are we measuring ourselves against? I mean, this has been, the age-old university model. Well, I got 72. Well, that's not great, but the class average was 56. So, I'm happy with that number in the grand scheme of things. We have a tendency to fall back and say, well, I had a 85% positive feedback score from our team. So is that good? Well, maybe not if the average is 95 in the marketplace. Samer, how do you work with this with a company, and how do you help them put this into effect and then use it as opposed to just gather it?
Absolutely. And obviously there's a lot of challenges around data to start with. As a vendor that sells software that creates a lot of data, we're sitting on billions of data points, and we know in this day and age, data is gold for AI and everything else, right? So there's that part. There's a responsibility that comes with it as well. And then there is the fact that most companies are sitting on way more data than they're actually doing anything about. They're doing, there's way more data. They're not doing much, and they keep on adding to that repository. So there is a big problem, when we talk about, in general, we're a feedback company, so we're here to listen to people. We transform the feedback in an ideal world into insights, because most people don't understand feedback. They take it personally. You read the comments a certain way, say, that hurt my feeling. I don't think this person likes me. And then once you transform the insight, we discover that people, even if they get an insight, they don't know what to do with it. Not everybody has the luxury of having consulting team around them. Like if you're a CEO of a 100,000 employee company, maybe you will get a consultant organization to help you with your strategy of what you do with the data, but not your 5,000 line managers. So there's a lot of education, there's a lot of support, and this is where AI can help a lot, because we can easily today provide the capability to transform data into insight into action. So the 5,000 line managers may not even have to read the comment or even get to the data. To say, based on the data we've been receiving, we're recommending you shorten your meetings, you do more of this, you stop doing that, you start doing that, and that's it. And then it becomes very easy. We live in an easier world where people literally can see, these are my 3 guiding points for these next 3 months. And now the data accumulates behind the scenes, and it can inform you do better. There is the comparative piece, which is good, saying, okay, you know what? A lot of CHROs out there, sometimes they're going to come and brag that I joined this company, and since I joined it, employee engagement moves from 85% to 89%. But in a silo, it means nothing, right? I do agree, times change. There is the part of comparative. That's good if what you're trying to do is compete with the world. That's bad, but that's good if you're using it to get a sense of, are we doing better, or do we need to do better? But even in that, there's a lot that's hidden. What if in that 13%, you're at 87%, so it means you're not at 100, so there's 13% that is disengaged. What if they all meet a certain very similar criteria? They're all female employees. Now, suddenly, that big score means nothing, even if it compared greatly with all other organizations. So our duty is to go beyond just comparatives, beyond education, beyond supporting from that journey that's very difficult from insight to action, developing feedback literacy in organization, helping organizations set up safe spaces to understand that if I voice my concern or express myself, I won't get punished for it, right? You have to take all that into consideration, but yet give them intelligent insights that don't leave anything behind. So you have to correlate and start looking at all the holes and come and say, yeah, this is working, but you seem to have a problem with this group. And here's what they're recommending you start doing, you stop doing, you continue doing. And by the way, there are these 3 scenarios that are considerably problematic that you need to deal with really fast. So that's the depth or level of support we need to provide in this day and age.
So you hit a couple of key words along the way that, put my antenna up, obviously security, responsibility, AI, anonymity for a lot of these surveys are huge, and a lot of people question them. And obviously interpretation of data. We'll come back to AI interpretation, but when you look at this, I think for most employees, you hit the nail on the head. They're afraid of the implications of answering. And as much as we tell them we've got a third-party external source that's doing the survey or having access to it, and none of our managers will, a lot of people still don't believe that we can create that barrier that allows them to be safe or not identify them. How do you help with this?
Building a safe space and providing that kind of psychological safety to people is very critical on both sides, by the way, not just the employee that expresses themselves. Do they have a safe space to express themselves? But also to the manager that will receive the results, or the teacher that will receive the results from their constituents. How do we make sure that when they read the results, their psychological safety is also protected? And how do they go beyond it so they can actually take the insight without being affected by the comment? It's a journey. An example you used was Slack. Today we have the ability to run our machine learning models and give you all the insights that come out of Slack. But if your employees know, then they're going to go find a new place to start communicating because they're going to be worried. But if you take one Slack channel and you say, by the way, we're going to analyze this for this specific purpose, the insights are going to be available to HR and they won't get access to the comments, etc., and you educate, then it becomes different. Then people will start going a bit further in that journey of providing feedback that they feel is going to help or be more actionable. So it's really important to take into consideration that notion of how can we make it safe. A final example that's very specific, one of the work we're doing is to be able to predict from an employee comment, one comment they make, can we predict with certainty if they're at risk of leaving the company within a 6-month range? So that to a company is lovely, right? You can come and say, great, can I get that? I'm going to say, yes, you can. But if your employees are going to know that from one comment, you're going to be able to predict if they're going to be leaving, and you're going to have your managers going to them, hey, my God, you just made a comment. Why are you leaving? Then nobody will ever tell you the truth. So then we're saying, yes, the technology allows you to go that far. What we're going to recommend you do is just use this technology at the aggregate level. Use it at the level of the department. You're going to be able to know that in Department A, the likelihood of attrition has just increased by 10%. And this is why, and this is what we recommend you do. Yes, you can use the technology to get to the level of the person, but if you do, it's not going to work for you. So we have a lot of education, we have a lot of work to do to ensure that it's not used for bad, it's actually used for good.
One comment about AI, a lot of companies, are adding AI as if it's like a new product. They're just kind of adding it onto the side. You obviously have been thinking about AI for many years, long before ChatGPT made us all talk about AI. Tell us about your philosophy about sort of more fulsome top to bottom approach of using AI, not just another doodad, I guess.
Yeah. So the way we look at AI, and you're right, we started our project in 2016 and we launched it in March of 2023. So we literally worked behind the scenes for 5 to 6 years before we even brought it to market. There's a lot of elements, right? There's the element of responsibility. There's an element of supporting good decisions, and then there's the element of ethics, right? So on the responsibility side, there's a lot of data powers AI. We have billions of data points that we own as a provider, as a creator of data with our solutions. And the premise is, how do we make sure you're using data in the right way, in a responsible way? And how do we make sure that nobody can have access to that data and it's all anonymized, aggregated, and used with consent? So even though we have this data, when we built our model, we went to every single one of our customers and we said, would you give us permission to actually use your data for this specific purpose? And if we're going to anonymize, we're going to do that. And I can tell you about 80% of our customers didn't give us that permission. We didn't use their data, even though we could have. So the first part is ensuring that the data you're sourcing is sourced ethically. The second part is making sure that you're providing quality insights from the data. Today with ChatGPT, for example, it's fantastic. I've got obsessed about it for months when it came out. And the only thing is I realize is that it will give me the summary of the global knowledge. So it kind of brings the bias that comes with that knowledge as well. So if all the websites in the world see a certain conflict in the world in a certain way, and you ask ChatGPT about it, ChatGPT will answer it based on the summary of what it sees. 80% of the websites say this, so that's the truth. So there is a risk a little bit with the quality of the insight that we give. So the first decision we made is we want to make sure that the data is the insights that we give you from it are quality. So we actually put humans in between the algorithm and the output. We said we want to make sure that every data that goes into the model is actually vetted by 3 people, so that in a blind way, to ensure that if it gets to the model, the insight that we give you, you can count on it to make a decision. So that slows down the process. That doesn't go as fancy and as widespread. But the good news is we're a focused organization. We're serving student experience in higher ed and employee experience in enterprise, so it's not complicated. And we're able to do that. So really, that's what it looked like is, did you source your data in a good way? Are you giving me quality insight? And are you giving me the support around it so that I don't use it for bad and destroy the whole value of it, which is what we just talked about.
So just for the podcast audience now, a little bit more on AI ethics, because Montreal has been home to an AI ethics work group for a while. We have a lot of interesting thinkers in that department. You said something interesting that I think in terms of compartmentalizing how you use data gathering and AI for your employees, an opt-in situation almost, so that employees know when they opt into a channel, a work group or whatever, they know that group is part of something that is being used with AI to collect data and all that. And then you have your more private spaces online as well. Is that your vision, to have a level of consent there?
Yes, it's critical to ensure that you see what you want is people to express themselves more, honestly, for others to take that information and turn it into meaningful action that benefits everybody, right? So at the foundation, that's what you want to do. The minute you break the purpose of why you're capturing data or how you're capturing data, insights, let's say, then the whole exercise will fail. If I do employee evaluation because I want to help improve employees, everybody will be on board, everybody will express themselves. If I'm going to do employee evaluation because I'm going to use it to fire 10% of my workforce, then most of the people will not say the truth, and some of them will actually, that want to hurt someone, will say negative things. The ones that want to help them, they say positive things. Exercise is absolutely useless, and that's how you get away from creating safe spaces. So beyond the AI notion, to start with, when we talk about safe space, we always say about, are you educating people? Do they know what's going to happen with the feedback they do? Are you showing them that you're driving improvement? And are you making them sure you're not using it to punish them or reward them because of it? So if you bring these together, you're building a foundation for safe space. Then on top of it, there's a layer of AI coming now. And it's kind of mysterious, right? Everybody talks about it, and supposedly it's going to replace jobs and replace humans. And so it's coming in with certain negative, and suddenly that AI thing is listening to everything you're saying on Slack. So now you're taking that issue that was foundationally based on, can we build that safe culture, and saying there's something more. And is this going to steal my data? Are they going to learn how I function and emulate me? God knows how things go with these, within people's imagination. So now the education has to double. We have to let people know what does this specific AI do? What does it not do? What it is, what it's not. And how is it really going to help the overall organization? To me, going into a channel where people talk about improving benefits and Slack and being able to mine that, and I don't have to an HR person having to read it continuously and figure out what to improve and use their bias in it to decide what to do or not. And I can have AI to come completely unbiased at scale, give me a snapshot of what is it we should improve every 6 months or do better or stop doing. I'll take that in a heartbeat, and the employees may contribute even more to it. So it's really important to keep in mind always like the use and the purpose of something. We talk about the nuclear energy, a lot of the Netflix shows today around that with Oppenheimer, etc. This is a great advancement in technology, but we chose to use it for something else as well. And then suddenly, it became a negative thing. And I think with AI, we have the same opportunity and the same responsibility.
So maybe I just take a step back in I'd like to know the qualification of data. I mean, obviously for decades it was gender based, or it was you were under 40, you were over, we certainly post COVID, the generational differences I think are very glaring right now. And that sense of Gen X and millennial and baby boomers and Gen Y, I mean, there's a whole exercise here that is creating for a bias in data that's collected by certain groups. How much of that do you take into consideration as you're helping evaluate that data? And how do you, I guess for lack of a better term, how do you temper that into your analysis?
Yes, it's actually critical. And it's a very good point. When I should have covered that when we talk about the responsible AI. It's really important to ensure that when we're sourcing data to power our algorithm, we actually make that data as diverse as humanly possible. Give you an example in another industry that I kind of researched for a while, which is the law enforcement in the US. And they went and they wanted to model algorithm that will help the police person to be able to detect if the person they're seeing is about to do something bad or not. But they modeled it around the general population that they had in prisons, right? So these algorithms were not as good to detect a big part of the population that could actually still do something, but they're underrepresented in the data set that was included in it, and it created major setbacks for that organization. So this is very similar. We're going to come and, in our case, we're going to say we need to cover all kinds of languages. we need to cover all kinds of countries, all kinds of cultures, all types of organizations. And you always are going to find a hole of something you didn't consider. And, recently we learned something, we're in the culture of feedback, right? So we're serving organizations in North America, and then we're serving organizations in Japan. And for us, we thought it was as simple as just translating what we did in English to Japanese, until we realized that there are some innate cultural differences for a Japanese person that will never express dissatisfaction or negative sentiment in their expression, because culturally they follow a very different approach to that. And we had to tailor our models to ensure that if they express a sense of dissatisfaction that usually we would completely ignore for a North American, we're actually going to pop it and say, be careful, there may be an issue there, and take that to other spectrum. Imagine somebody in Italy where they actually will take the other extreme in terms of expressing sentiment. And that's just a little example that shows how there's always a dimension from a diversity standpoint that will be missed no matter what. So we make every effort. The important thing is to continue on evolving and saying, okay, we just did this. Okay, there's a cultural piece. The fact that you speak Japanese doesn't define how you express your opinions. So the cultural component comes to play now. And this is what, we keep on evolving the models. It comes with the responsibility. If I want to give you information that you can use to make very important decisions, I have the responsibility to ensure that I'm always ensuring that it is not biased, that it doesn't follow what the general mainstream opinion is or what our own biases are. And that's why, by the way, we put 3 annotators on every single change we do in our algorithm, because unless the 3 of them agree without talking to each other on the same output, it will not make it, because we'd rather give you less information that's actionable than a lot of information that you can't rely on to make a decision.
So Dan, it's interesting. I mean, we were taught in chemistry class in high school, or the biopharma lab experiments, to eliminate bias as we're creating our sample. I think there's a lot of people today that are still concerned that AI is not eliminating bias, or that some of the surveys that we're using corporately are not eliminating bias. And I think that's a huge factor to creating a safe space and getting honesty and independence.
When we talk about systemic racism, I think I'd like your thoughts on that too, Samer, because, early on, people like Abhishek Gupta here in Montreal, the AI ethics group, where we're talking about programming our own prejudices into AI and how that can get systematized very quickly. You mentioned one example, but it also, to me, it starts with values, right? You have to program your values. So do you have like a values pillar at your company, or something to guide everyone to think of when they're making these programming decisions?
Well, yes, and it's a very good point. Because we've done it when we did accessibility. That's again a tangent, but it's very important. With the same example, accessibility was something that was introduced to say everybody has the right to accessing anything technology, right? Because the web made it difficult at one point. If I'm blind, what do I see from a website? Unless if it's built to certain standards. So the governments came and mandated it. And a lot of our customers, especially in higher ed, came and says, if you're not compliant with the latest accessibility standard, we can't buy from you. So a lot of organizations went and said, great, we're going to be legally compliant. We went and said, no, I want my developers to actually take courses in accessibility, develop empathy towards it, and they have to actually imagine the experience with their eyes closed. So there's an element always of social responsibility that if you don't ingrain it in people, it's very easy to go the other way, because if at the end the business wants to make money, and if it's all it is just check a box to sell, you will check a box to sell. We want to make sure that we're actually in line with the belief that we're saying, we're a company that allows people to express themselves. So we have to give that right to everybody. We want to make sure that anybody can have their voice heard with the same ease, with an equivalent experience, so that actually it's convenient to them. You shouldn't be punished just because you happen to be a blind person using a screen reader. So with AI, it's very similar. The point is, again, having people, one, that are diverse themselves, that have learned the world, because most of the time the bias is unconscious, right? So you don't know, you didn't imagine or understand that there will be a scenario where that policeman's going to arrest somebody that doesn't fit the profile of the 90% of the people that you modeled in your algorithm. That's a policeman that's going to have a problem because they don't detect the signal. It's very different how a certain person from a certain culture or background going to express anxiety from somebody else. So we're lucky. We're in Montreal, and we have the advantage of being a very multicultural place, hopefully still going to be the case, and actually be able to have a lot of people. Yesterday I was walking and, the police were having an interaction with somebody that was of a certain diversity group, and the person was literally very active, and he's putting his hands on the shoulder of the policeman. The policeman was calm, and because they were able to understand that, culturally speaking, these people are much more touchy-feely and expressive on their emotion than somebody else I could stop. And he didn't react in a certain way where they tased him or just said, you know what, AI told me the minute somebody touches you, it means they're about to do something, so tase them, for example. And I think that's where that works. And I agree with you a lot, Dan, is that at the end, it's the foundation of it, is the values and the commitment an organization make to say, yes, we want to make money, we are a business, but we're going to do it the right way.
Our guest is Samer Saab, the founder and CEO of insight solutions company Explorance. His one piece of advice for inspiring entrepreneurs is coming up in a few minutes, plus lots about AI ethics and more of the data collection and big tech, all in the podcast. But first, let's go to our BDO specialist. Mia Barouki is Senior Specialist, People Experience Advisory at BDO Canada. Welcome back, Mia.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
And Mike, we're here to talk about AI and how it can really be applied to people and culture, which is what we've spoken about with Samer's software. Interesting ethics questions, a lot of learning to be had as well from these insights.
Yeah, most definitely. Unfortunately, Mia, we don't have an hour because I could drill you with a whole bunch of questions. Maybe we'll come back to some of the ethics discussions, but let's get into some of the basic. How is AI transforming our way of working today? I mean, this is topical. It's out there. It's a big concern for a lot of people. How is it affecting what we're doing on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, so it's important to know that AI has been around for really long, and it's not just today that we've been hearing about it recently that we've been realizing about it. So we've mainly seen changes in automation. AI is great at automating repetitive tasks, which frees up human time so they can focus on more creative and high-level strategic tasks. So that's a good thing about AI and how it's transforming our way of working now. And another great thing is data analysis, like we've been hearing about with Samer earlier. So AI can process huge amounts of information and data quickly, and not only quickly, but accurately as well, if you have the right algorithms, and which really helps make more informed and data-driven decisions, and less biased in some cases, if properly created. And I would say overall, AI increases human capabilities and streamlined processes, and is really core to innovation in the workplace.
So recently I read an article that I found quite interesting, and everybody says, well, AI is going to replace people on the labor market. It went on to say that ultimately maybe this is just going to be a zero-sum game, but the new people that are going to come into the market are going to replace those that are outdated in the market. Is AI going to replace manpower on the labor market?
Okay, so we hear that question very often. So while AI has the potential to automate certain tasks and jobs, and it will lead to a displacement of manpower, but it's also going to create new opportunities and roles. It's going to take out some, but bring in some new ones. So again, because certain tasks will be replaced by automation, we will see a shift in skill set. So workers will need to acquire new skills, adapt their existing ones, and will have to remain relevant. And this is where really we're going to see HR professional and business owner play an important role in strategic planning and seeing how they can upskill their existing talent to leverage those people who already know their business well and retain them and use them where they have more capacity.
Yeah, I think the key word that you said there is relevance. I mean, ultimately, at the end of the day, we have had a slow-moving process of relevance. So, you took an employee maybe over a 30 or 40-year span. Their relevance may have decreased if they weren't keeping up to speed. I think the big key right now is relevance could have an immediacy in a change value. So which roles do you think are going to be impacted most by AI?
Yeah, so the ones that we can remove routine repetitive tasks, or anything that could be easily performed by a machine. So we'll see a lot of administrative support tasks slow down, or these people will will still have to do some administrative work, but a lot of those tasks will have to be taken off their plates and be performed by AI. Customer service representatives, we see chatbots all over the place. Data entry clerks will just put some data in a software and it'll analyze it for us. Telemarketers, accounting, and bookkeeping clerks in some cases. This is it's still new, so I don't think this will happen anytime soon, but some tasks will be replaced. Retail salespeople, we see the self-checkout couches, manufacturing and production workers, so line workers. And we've also seen transportation and delivery drivers already be replaced by AI, Amazon robots delivering your parcels. Yeah.
So quickly, before we have to wrap up, what are the potential risks of AI in the workplace as you see them today?
Yeah. So we've already talked about ethics earlier with Dan. So that's an important point. But we're also going to see a risk in bias and discrimination. Like I mentioned earlier, if the data used to train AI is not correct, and if the algorithms are not properly designed, it may discriminate against some groups. There's also privacy and cybersecurity concerns. AI systems often rely on vast amount of data, including personal information about employees, about people, and whatnot. And if this data is not adequately protected, it could create breaches and misuse. And cybersecurity threats. So AI systems can be vulnerable to that, including attacks aimed at manipulating AI algorithms. Yeah. One more important part. We're going to rely a lot on AI. So that might be a problem. And then we're going to lose a bit of human touch.
And if I may, guys, there are lots of opportunities if you phase in AI over many years to promote some of your workforce, right? Instead of cutting it, they just have to take on larger, perhaps more supervisory responsibilities.
Yeah, exactly. We're going to have to invest a bit more also on training and education to help upskill.
Excellent. Mia Barouki, Senior Specialist People Experience Advisory at BDO Canada. Thanks so much.
You're welcome. Happy to be here.
Don't forget, you can read more thought leadership and expert advice from the BDO team at bdo.ca. And as we come to the end of our show, let's turn to our entrepreneur, Samer Saab, CEO and founder of Explorance, and ask him for his one piece of advice for inspiring entrepreneurs. Samer, what do you think?
So this is an interesting one because I've been reflecting about that a lot recently. I think a lot got disrupted. And when COVID hit and the way we've handled COVID, I've always questioned, are we going to see a downturn in the amount of entrepreneurs that are going to have the audacity to build organizations? And it comes down to two elements, risk and sacrifice. And I feel there's a lot of damage that's taken place. Risk because we've seen a pandemic wipe out value overnight. And sacrifice because we were told you can bunker down, we'll take care of you, don't worry, and you'll come out when it's over. So those two have gotten tamed a lot. And then I've wondered, the two things that I needed when I started Explorance was to be willing to take a big risk and willing to sacrifice a lot, because you can't create value with nothing. So I'm saying these are the two things that got compromised the most. How is it that the next generation of entrepreneurs is going to come and continue from where everybody has left off? So if I have one advice, if somebody has that itch and they feel that they want to start something, that they're struggling in employment, they want to do something, then typically it feels easy, no matter how much risk you're going to take, how much you're going to sacrifice. Just go ahead, start that foundation of a business. And you know what? There's a lot of great value ahead. We make a lot of difference. We build a lot of great things. We fail a lot. Who cares? And I really hope that we're going to go beyond that and prove that the generation of, the quality of entrepreneurship, even though it has to take a more risk and more perceived sacrifice today, that we actually go ahead and do it. I really think it's going to play around that, because it's not as easy to start something today as it was 10 years ago.
Samer Saab, CEO, founder of Explorance. Thanks so much. Mike, final thoughts?
Yeah, there's two elements that come out of this, and that I think we are seeing significantly since COVID. We're there before, but we're certainly accelerated. Is this ongoing concept of a safe zone, that ability to extract information and have an honest data sample, and the other, and I've watched this for years, is the bias associated with information. I mean, give somebody a little bit of bias, and they can manipulate data into anything they want at the end of the day, which is a little bit of a dangerous thing. So, part of our understanding to all of this is how do we control bias, and how do we make sure at the end of the day that the data that we're gathering is used properly, not just safe, but it's great to say that the data is fully safe, but are we interpreting it properly? And I think that unbiased is what's made great scientists over the year. And I don't think in the world of data gathering that there's any difference.
Samer, thanks so much.
Thank you both. Really appreciate it.
And a reminder, you can subscribe to Inspiring Entrepreneurs as a podcast on iHeartRadio or your favorite platform. Thanks, Mike. See you next week.
This has been a production of TNKR Media. Good talk.